Well, what's the latest on the old Transoceanic H500? Well, a little bit of work, a little bit of spraying, and a few other things, and we finally have some sound out of it from my Heathkit signal generator. It was apparently the switches down in here that had gotten mud on them. I sprayed them real good before, but I must not have sprayed them good enough. I really flooded them this time. I'll probably flood them again just to make sure. This is from the transmitter. Well, I finally finished that painting I have been doing for that nurse. She'll be picking it up tomorrow. She doesn't know that the painting is done, but it just so happens we got real lucky on it because this weekend is her birthday. And she turns her ripe old age of 31 years old, you know. So she'll be getting the painting, and she doesn't even know she's going to get it. So this whole thing has really worked out real well. I like it. It turned out pretty darn good overall. Today is Friday, January 10th, and next Wednesday the temperature is supposed to be 65 degrees. So if all goes as planned, our oldest grandson will be over here to help me start putting together the front end on the Thunderbird. Hopefully that'll happen. Well, I haven't spent a lot of time with him since he returned from overseas. He was stationed in Turkey, and he came back to he's in the Air Force, and he was stationed back at Little Rock Air Force Base, and he's got his family, and he doesn't have a whole lot of time, you know, to spend, but he does have a couple days off, so he's going to spend one of the days with me putting the old T-Bird. You know, I think we can knock it all out in 3 hours, and mostly it'll be just, you know, fun in the sun with my grandson. So I decided that between now and then I'd go ahead and pick up a grinder. I need a grinder. I need a 6-inch grinder. So I took a trip down to Harbor Freight the other day. I don't usually buy a ton of stuff at Harbor Freight, but you know, they had this thing on sale for $40, and I figured, you know, what the heck, it's a good 6-inch grinder, big enough to do what I want. I don't need some giant grinder, and it comes with the 2 wheels, which I don't know if I should trust them or not. But I did go ahead and pick up a wire wheel to mount on it also. The arbor on this is a 1/3 horsepower, and the arbor on it is a 1/2 inch. And this should work. It's got a little light that goes with it. We'll see. So if I'm going to have a grinder, I'm of course going to have a table. So I've been building this table out here in my shop where it's warm, and we're beginning to, you know, finish it up. I've got to put some braces along underneath there and along the back, and then out to here under there. Eventually I'll probably put another one here, which will afford me a lower shelf. We'll do that later. But right now I'm going to be mounting this thing here, the base, to the top, and I have not fastened down the top yet. It's still loose, and I didn't use really thick plywood. Didn't need it. I want this thing. I don't want this thing to weigh 400 pounds. I want it to be, you know, light enough I can move it around, but big enough to do the job. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mount the grinder over here in the corner, and I'm going to use this 2x6 here. I'm going to cut it to size and run it underneath here with another 2x4 and give a good solid base to screw this down with. It's going to take some bolts. I haven't torn it apart. I'm not exactly certain how that thing fastens on, but before I start cutting everything, I'm going to do that. I'm going to take a look at it and see if my brilliant idea is going to work. Now here's the bottom, which means you know, I'll have to alter what I'm doing because they have these rubber legs. These are nice and soft and squishy. That's kind of nice. The problem is this aluminum thing in the center that I can remove, but I don't really want to do that. It's pretty flexible stuff, just bends in cheesy. So what I'm going to do is let it sit right on these 4 rubber feet, which are nice and cushy, and then bolt it down through. I'll put a cushion on the top, of course, where the bolt comes through, and then I'll run it down through the board I'm going to mount it to, and then put rubber mounts between the bottom of the board and the top of the table. Now this long board will still be going underneath the top, okay, I want something to bolt into, and I'll probably have to add a 2x4 to it, or I don't know, it may just be wide enough. I don't know, I'll worry about that when the time comes. But assume this is the width of the board right here. Forget this part. From here over, I'm going to be mounting it to a short board from here to there, and we'll just run the bolts down through. The cushion will be on top, and then I think underneath here I'll put 4 more cushions, 1 in each corner. That'll give me double vibration damping. I don't know if that thing, does that thing look like it's hanging at an angle to you? Every time I buy Chinese junk from Harbor Freight, I'm always leery of it. I don't know, we'll see. But I want this wheel to hang over the edge, because this is where I'm going to be using a wire brush, and later on I'll be putting a buffing wheel so I can buff some things. And this board will not be here, so I'll have this grinding wheel up pretty high, so I'll be able to get underneath it, you know, a little bit further to grind things down. Not big things, it's only a 6-inch grinder. And then this, I'll cut a hole back here to run the electrical cord down through, and I'll get that out of our way. So anyway, that's the whole big plan. I'll show it to you when it's done. Alright, I've got this big old thick board screwed in and glued in. I got it glued in on both edges to the 2x4s. I wanted to have plenty of strength there. We got it screwed in as well. And as you can see, the base now has plenty of room to sit there all the way out to the edge where I want it. It's nice and solid. It's going to be a lot more solid with this thing there than just sitting it on plywood. I'll tell you what, let's go ahead. I'm still going to put the plywood top on, of course, and which will give it even more strength. And then our cushions, I don't know, we may not even need that board. I'll have to check it out. Let me go ahead and plug it in and turn it on, and I'll just hold it for a second and see if it makes a lot of noise. Alright, here it goes. Now this is a 6-inch grinder. I said it twice already, so I don't expect a whole lot of, it's only got a 3,450 RPM speed to it. So let's see what happens. You know, I don't expect a whole, I don't think it's going to take off and go across the table on me. Well, so far so good. Let it go. Look at there. Sitting perfectly still, perfectly quiet. How about that? I may not even need that mounting board. I may just have to put the 2 screws in there and see what happens. It's not moving at all, not making any noise. One good thing about building a shop table or a garage table or any kind of workbench at all, it gives you a chance to get rid of your old 2x4s and stuff that have been hanging around forever. They got holes in them from every project you can think of. Everybody saves a pile of 2x4s at some point in their life. So you just cut them up and use them. I needed support for the top on this table. As I told you, it's only a 1/2 inch thick. I just didn't want to go with 3/4. It's too expensive. When I get all done, I'll have about $30, 30 to 34, I think, in this table, in this bench. And that'll be good enough. I've got the top all marked and positioned and clamped down so it doesn't move on me on both sides. And I've drilled holes along both ends, this end and the opposite end. And what we're going to use for this, I was going to use some drywall screws, some coarse thread drywall screws, but I discovered I had some of these exterior types, which are also coarse thread, and they're they're 1 1/4 inches long, which will be perfect for this right here. But before you do on the top, I'm on a countersink each. You know, you just run your screw down in there on plywood, and that plywood, when you get it down there, it has a tendency to do that number, stick up on you. So what we're going to do is we're going to countersink it with a countersink, and then it doesn't take much. Go a little bit more. Anyway, you're kind of getting the idea, I hope. Let me zoom in here. You want to countersink it a little bit so the head of the screw does not stick up on you. You don't want it to hit any of the equipment you put on there. There we go. I want it to be countersunk down below the first layer of plywood if possible. I want it to be down in there. So let's see how that looks. I may have to change my mind later, but right now it looks good. There we go. That is perfect. Just where I want it. Okay, not too deep, not too shallow, but enough where nothing will catch on it. Now I only got what, 3,000 more to go. Well, there she is, all secured down, nice and tight. I think what we'll do now is go ahead and turn it on, see if it makes any more noise at all before we finish. I want to still drill a hole back in here for the cord. Now this is just sitting there, it's not even bolted down. That's not bad at all, not bad at all. I'm pretty happy about that. almost no vibration. That's a surprise. Anytime you use a grinder or electric drill that's got a grinder on it, or a wire brush or anything else, make sure you wear face shields, goggles. And I'm not talking about a pair of eyeglasses. A pair of eyeglasses, standard eyeglasses that you wear every day, they are not protective eyeglasses, okay? You've got to get safety glasses, safety shield. I work where at the plant I retired from. We get people in here all the time. These vendors would show up and they'd say, well, you're going to need a pair of safety glasses to go inside. And they said, no, I got eyeglasses. I said, wrong. Those are not safety glasses. I'd make them take them with them. And I'd run into the shop or into the plant later on, maybe to take a break. And here these clowns would be with their safety glasses in their shirt pocket, still wearing their eyeglasses. Well, they finally got smart, the plant did, and said, if we find you in here with no safety glasses on, out you go and you won't come back. And that sort of stopped it, which was kind of good. Real safety glasses, believe it or not, when something hits them, the glass is supposed to blow away from your eye. Good quality glasses, blow away. Nowadays, plastic, people think, well, I got plastic. No, it's really important to get a full face shield. That's really the best way to go, with maybe even a pair of safety glasses underneath it. This stuff, these things here can actually explode if they get too hot. A lot of people will grind aluminum with them, and they'll heat up and they'll actually explode. They'll just blow, and the stuff will come flying out like you wouldn't believe. It'll hit you in the face and everything. Full face shield is always the best way to go. Okay, enough preaching. Be safe with these things. Just because it's a 6-inch grinder, still dangerous, especially these. This is a coarse and medium stone made in China. You know what that means, don't you? I don't know how long they're going to last, but I'm going to keep a very, very close eye on these things. I'm not going to jam things in there. There's a shield that goes on and a bunch of other stuff I haven't put on yet. But all right, let's move on to the next subject. It is the next day. Last night, which was Friday the 10th of January, we had some pretty wild weather down here in the deep south. Texas, Oklahoma, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Arkansas. Tornadoes, 3 people killed. Terrible, terrible. There's a train that had 20 cars, I believe it was blown completely off the track. I mean, the cars are laying over on the side on that. That's some pretty big straight line winds that can do that. Anyway, we survived, and it looks like we're going to be in for some more rain here. It's already raining again, so we were going to go out for some nice Chinese dinner or lunch this afternoon at our favorite Chinese restaurant. But wifey doesn't want to go out in this nasty cold weather, rainy, and I don't blame her. We have to be careful with her. We can't risk her getting pneumonia, that's for sure. What I did here was, I won't be mounting this to a board. There's no need to it. There's not that much vibration to it. I don't need a bunch of cushioning and everything, so that's kind of nice, other than mounting it to the tabletop, of course. So in order to figure out, we have a hole here and a hole here that the bolts have to go down through. These are the, I picked up a couple of bolts downtown. These are 5/16, if I can figure out how to get them in there. Yeah, there we go. This is 3/4 of an inch thick. And that gives me, it'll wind up giving me about not quite an inch to go down into the table. Underneath this tabletop is where that thick wood was. So I went ahead and took this off, and the reason I did that was to give me a pattern over here. To I position it where I want it. I drew out a pattern with a pencil in these holes, and we're ready to drill. And there was one other thing I wanted to cover. Oh yeah, I'm going to go ahead and put this wire wheel on. This is a 6-inch wire wheel. We're going to put this on when we get done, because I have a lot of, as I told you earlier in the video, my grandson's coming over Wednesday. By the way, the temperature is not going to be 65 degrees. It's going to be 72, which is fantastic. We'll be able to get a lot of work done on the old Thunderbird. So hopefully that'll be the next video you see after this one. We'll finally kick back in. But then the temperatures go down into the 40s again. So I need to take advantage of this coming Wednesday. If he shows up, fine. If he doesn't, it's still fine. I'm going to have to work on it. But I have a lot of threads on bolts that we're going to be using. I want to clean out the threads really good with this wire brush. Any rust that's accumulated, anything at all, so they go in nice and easy. I said that this was aluminum earlier. Sure feels like it. Sure sounds like it. But it's not. It's cheap tin. cheap from China. Are you kidding me? Anyway, what we're going to do is go ahead and drill holes down in there. Oh, maybe that far. I'm not going to go too deep. Then I'm going to run the bolts down in by hand. Then we'll put all this back together and set it over here to see if we can't get it bolted in. This is where the a nice little ratchet wrench set comes in handy, you know. You can get up in little tight spots like this, you know, and it just works great. I love these ratchet wrenches. They've come in handy for me so many times. Anyway, I'm not cranking it down to where this thing here is practically welded into the table, you know. I'm just going to tighten it down enough to keep it from falling off of the workbench. That's all. You know, it doesn't need it. It's a very stable little unit so far. Now, once the grinding stones get worn down, you never know what you're going to run into. Or after I put this wire wheel on, I don't know what I'm going to run into, but I'm going to be putting a little bit of pressure against that wire wheel here once I switch this out with it. I want to make sure that you know, this thing doesn't go flying off on the table. That would not be cool. This is just more of a safety precaution right now. Once my grandson gets here on Wednesday, if everything goes as planned, like I said, then I should have all the bolt threads, you know, all cleaned up, ready to go. I'll take this back off. It's a pretty little heavy item, and then he and I will take this and put it out in the garage, and then I'll go ahead and remount this thing. It's just a matter of, you know, these two bolts with a ratchet wrench, nothing to it. But I'm not going to, you know, grill the thing down. Matter of fact, there should be plenty right there. That's pretty good. I may tighten it a little bit more. We'll see. Well, I had to tighten it down a little tighter than I expected. It's nice and snug now because it would rattle way too much against the bolts themselves. The base plate against the bolts would rattle like crazy. So I cranked it on down here. She's nice and steady and nice and quiet now. Time to change, get rid of this. I may wind up putting this wheel over here later on. I'm not sure. Once you get her loose, you just take it out. I've changed these on other grinders in the past, but you know, that was quite a while ago. So now we'll go ahead and take this out. That's all there is to it. Slips right off, just as slick as can be. And we have this back plate right here. Now this, but earlier I told you it has a 1/2 inch arbor. That's what this is. This shaft here is the arbor. So you can't put a larger hole on a smaller shaft, or a smaller shaft or a smaller hole on a larger shaft. It just doesn't work. Now this thing right here is for I think it's 5/8 and a half. It uses both of them, but it doesn't say anything about removing the center. So apparently it just stays there, and you just slip it over until the 1/2 inch one comes out, and then you go ahead and put your plate on. At least that's as far as I can tell, like so. I don't know. I may have to wind up taking the inside one off or something. I'm not 100% sure how that's going to be. I'll work on it and get back with you. We now have the wire wheel on. Of course, I got poked in the finger a couple of times. I'm still bleeding for you guys, you know. So let's turn it on and see how she does. It's not too bad. Some of those little wire things are hitting right here. Let me shut it down. Maybe I can clip off those wires. Now, anytime you have to work on the wheel, either one, for any reason whatsoever, make sure the grinder's unplugged. Don't take any chances. This thing will tear up your finger in no time. Maybe even have no fingers left. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my little cutters and I'm going to spin this thing around. Easy does it like. I'm going to trim off any stray hairs there, because what they're doing is they're hitting right here. That's what's making that noise. I didn't take too many off. You know, you want to be careful trimming this thing. You trim it too much, you put it out of balance. You can bet it's already out of balance when you buy it. So I took my vice grips and I put them right here, and I kind of bent this out just a little bit away from the wheel. Did the same old thing over here to the grinder, and that'll give me all the clearance I need. If I need to go back, it's really cheap, flimsy metal. It'll bend easy. Let's see what happens now. Well, let me get these tools off of here. There, that's a lot quieter. These tools will vibrate around on there. Well, that's a whole lot better. Not quite as noisy, huh? Well, I'll tell you what, you know, I'm kind of happy with it. I mean, I didn't want to spend a whole lot of money on a table or a workbench, and I didn't want to spend a whole lot of money on a grinder. So the grinder plus the wire wheel plus the workbench pieces and parts came to about 80 bucks. Well, that's not too bad. You know, that's about what I wanted. It's about time to wrap this mess up. I'm sure most of you have probably been bored to death or already checked out and gone to another video by now. I don't blame you. The last things to put on are these arms, and they just bolt through. There's a flat washer. Let me see, let me get down in there. There's a flat washer and a lock washer, and the bolt goes all the way through and screws into a hole in this cover. Let me back up here a little bit. Screws into a hole in the cover on the side. You'll see one on each side, and then the arm comes up. Then of course we have this goes through here, and this is the spark guard. Same thing over here. Notice that the black part faces to the right here and to the left here. And then the last thing is the rest, where you put your item you're grinding against it. This one here is awfully close. I'm going to have to bend it down, I think, a little bit. But these here, I got it out as far as it'll go, and it's still awfully close. It's not touching, but it's awfully close. I'm not so sure I like that close. Anyway, you can adjust these back. I recommend you not go without these things. You do what you want. But I've found that over the years and all the, starting in shop class in high school, these things, after a while, they get cloudy and cracked and scratchy and messy and crappy, but still, they're there to protect you in addition to your full face helmet or full face shield and a helmet for some of us. 40 watt bulb this thing takes. I don't have a 40 watt. All I have is 60s. I'll have to pick up a 40. I'll probably slap an LED in there. So keep in mind this thing here is still a little bit out of balance. And one of the problems you're going to have with these cheap wheels and cheap wire wheels or anything else, there's brass wheels you can get in addition to the steel, is out of balance. They're out of balance and they'll cause the entire table to shake. It doesn't matter. No matter what you do, you ultimately have to wind up maybe buying a more expensive wire wheel or a more expensive grinding stone with a better balance. So let's turn it on and see how it does now with all this junk on it. Okay, we got a little bit lucky. Ours seemed to be pretty much in balance. I kind of like this little thing for the money I paid. Well, I hope some of you learned something on this. I was gonna cover a couple other things, but I think this video is long enough. Remember that in a couple of days, let me see, today's Saturday, Sunday, Monday, in 3 days I'm going to start on my next video for the Thunderbird, and we've got to get it done all in one day as much as we can. I don't know if we'll get it all done, but I want to get it done as much as we can, and if possible, even compress the coil spring, get it back in. We shall see. And that's it for now. Until next time, this is John. One more thing, I know I haven't put the braces on the legs. We'll be doing that after it gets out into the garage. I figured what the heck, it would be that much less weight we'd have to carry. As usual, there's always one more thing. This is for our younger folks out there who have never worked with plywood. Plywood is notorious for having splinters along the edge. And let me focus in here a little bit better. Okay. And what you need to do is get yourself a little wood rasp of some kind with a fine teeth, or use some sandpaper. Using sandpaper by hand is very, you'll wind up getting splinters in your hand trying to smooth this down. You want to kind of round it off just a little bit, because if you're sitting at this thing and your wrist slides back and forth on this, or your hand or something, you will get a sliver, a good sized sliver sometimes, right up into your meat. Boy, it hurts like crazy for days. So you can use a sander, a vibrating sander, or a sanding block, but try not to do it by hand, because you're going to get something, right into your fingers. But make sure you go all the way around it. And you don't need a lot of pressure. Just kind of knock off any splinters you might see. You can see them all right there that have accumulated already, that have come off. They're there. You just can't see them. I'm just barely using the weight of my hand to do this. And you do it all the way around, even on the edges down here. Here it's a little rough, but mostly you just kind of pull towards you on this. But you want to kind of round it off a little bit. You don't need to be bleeding all over because you failed to take this one last little step. And I'm telling you right now, all the old guys out there that have worked with plywood, not the young folks that haven't done it so much, there's not an old guy out there that hasn't worked with plywood that hasn't wound up with one heck of a splitter in his hand somewhere. And he bled like a stuck pig, you can bet on it.